name is Liz Ashley, and welcome to my channel. Please like and subscribe and turn on post notifications. And I have a membership and a shop and all the things. We're going to get into some headlines today, and we're going to dig into those. So we're going to talk about Trump potentially sending the National Guard to Chicago.
Welcome on back. Time now 6:43 this morning, and after sending the National Guard to D.C., President Donald Trump is threatening to send troops to Chicago and other cities. So let's go live to Scripps News Group national correspondent Joe St. George. And Joe, what's the possibility that other cities get involved, and what would be the goal for troops if they do get sent in?
Yeah, I think the probability is pretty high. I think there's a logical question here. Could a Colorado city be potentially targeted? Denver, after all, homicides take place in Denver for the moment.
Also, let's just preface this by saying that, okay, so Donald Trump sent the National Guard to DC. He was able to do that because DC isn't a state, right? And so he's able to do that legally, right? Even though he's lying and he's probably going to be there longer than 30 days because he can only legally be there 30 days. But of course he's lying. He's saying that there's crime everywhere. And now they're saying that, oh, in the past week, crime has been down. There's been no crime at all, which is probably not true. Also, it's only been like a week, or it's only been like a couple weeks, and so they really can't decipher that on any level. And so just lies all around, just straight up lies all the time. But now he's talking about sending National Guard troops to Chicago, and this is something that would not be legal. Again, not that it matters, it doesn't matter, he's gonna do it anyway. And so he's now threatening to send them to Chicago. Now, he's been saying this for a few months, but the Pentagon is actually like drafting like a plan if they were to go into Chicago. And so that's what they're doing. He said that Chicago is a killing field, which is not true. This is fascism. This is how it starts, and this is how it happens. And I think a lot of people still believe that he's actually sincerely doing this to get crime down, and that's crazy. That's crazy, because that's not true, and this is not how you get crime down. Yes, let's keep listening.
The president doesn't appear to be looking at the Mountain West. There seems to be other cities closer to the president's heart, if you want to refer to it as that, on this particular issue.
Well, they also have black mayors too, so that also seems to be a trend that he's going after.
Baltimore being one of them. The president posted on social media over the weekend, described Baltimore as crime-ridden, really got in a social media spat with the Democratic governor of Maryland, Wes Moore. Moore responded by saying that Baltimore is at its lowest homicide rate in his lifetime. Now, Governor Moore is really a millennial governor. He's not exactly 80 years old, but still a noteworthy perspective from local and state officials in Maryland.
What does that have to do with anything? What does it being a millennial have to do with anything? The crime is down. The crime has been down. And that is the other thing Donald Trump said today. He said, well, everyone wants to talk about how crime is at historic lows. And he's like, yeah, but we just put the National Guard in there. No, they were saying crime was at historic lows before that. They were saying crime had historic lows before that, before you sent the National Guard in. And so like, I really think he's losing it. He keeps saying crazy shit like this.
Obviously, President Trump has a different purview. In many ways, he has to feel it, and he isn't necessarily feeling it with Baltimore. He appears
feeling it. This is a news station. They're saying Donald Trump, the president of the United States, has to feel it. He has to get a vibe. And if he gets a bad vibe, he's sending in the National Guard. Like, that is literally what this man is saying right now. That Donald Trump is sending the National Guard to cities based on vibes. This is just insanity. This guy is just saying that this is all on vibes. That like all of this is just on vibes. which is psychotic, which is crazy, which is insane. Tariffs are essentially based on vibes. He's doing the tariffs based on vibes. Like, his whole presidency is like based on vibes. This is crazy.
The National Guard became armed in many cases. That's an escalation.
When the National Guard first went to DC, they were not armed, right? Pete Hegseth the other day, he made sure they were armed. So now they're armed. Now they're armed. Now the National Guard is armed in DC, which is really dangerous. And you're right. It is fascism. It is fascism because now that they're armed, this escalates things so much, because that guy that's like become like a legend that threw the sandwich, how much you want to bet if that they were armed, they would have shot him? Because they would have. Because I think a lot of these people who are going into these positions nowadays, now that Trump is in office and now that they're just like hiring whoever to do whatever, I think a lot of these people, like, that's what they want. They're like looking for a fight. They're looking to do force. That's why they're there. This is going to escalate the situation, but I think that's what he wants. I think he wants to escalate the situation, and I think he wants them to be armed, so that way if something does happen and someone does get hurt, he can continue to do martial law and send the National Guard like everywhere. And I do think that's his ultimate plan. I think that's his ultimate goal, which is really terrifying. I think this is going to end really badly. Like, I do really think, every time I say this, it reminds me of Hamilton, but I really do think it's like a powder cake waiting to explode. There's so much bubbling and everyone's just acting like it's so normal, but the more and more National Guard goes to all these different cities and the more armed they are and the more force they use, the more dystopian and the worse this is going to get, which is quite terrifying.
The president is posting on social media this morning how proud he is of Washington, D.C. In fact, he just posted seconds ago saying, quote, "DC is safe and booming." He said that 3 minutes ago on Truth Social. So this is an issue that the president is clearly interested in. Where else beyond Baltimore? Chicago was mentioned last week in the Oval Office. And the Washington Post reported over the weekend that the Pentagon has been drawing up plans for a possible deployment to Chicago in the near future. So expect this to be replicated. Where is he going thus far? Cities run by Democrats?
Well, and I don't like that they're not saying that, like, that. I understand, like, it doesn't matter, but, like, it's also not legal. Like, he's not allowed to do that. He is not allowed to send the National Guard into Chicago. He's not allowed to do that. Just like he wasn't allowed to do it with California. And so in Chicago, they're like, the governor and the mayor are like, we're looking at legal options in case this is something he's going to do. Now, do I think that's going to change anything? No, because he seems to do whatever he wants, no matter of the legality or what the court says or not.
In states with Democratic governors, that's important context as this story develops.
Yeah, honestly. And the other thing, like, this can get more like, this is going to get more fascist and this is going to get more authoritarian. But the other thing that's kind of scary is, like, okay, a lot of like the southern states are sending their National Guard to DC. And so now if they do it in Illinois, are the states around there, like Missouri, going to send their National Guard? And so when does this become a civil war? You know, like, when does that happen, right?
The AI team tonight is tracking the latest threats to Illinois from the U.S. Justice Department.
Just hours ago, President Trump said he may soon deploy the National Guard here in Chicago to focus on crime.
Chicago.
Okay, this is what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear him talk about this.
It's a mess. You have an incompetent mayor. Grossly incompetent.
He's not incompetent. Brandon Johnson is great. Okay, I know that there's some people who don't like him, but if you pay attention to what he's doing, he's been doing a lot of good shit recently. So he's not incompetent.
And we'll straighten that one out probably next. That'll be our next one after this.
Speaking from the Oval Office, a threat from President Trump that you may soon see federalized National Guard soldiers striding down Chicago streets.
I would expect to see the administration use the case, the sanctuary city case, as grounds for, if they choose to do it, for activating the National Guard, for federalizing the National Guard. The theory being that the state of Illinois is obstructing the federal government.
Insane. They're saying that because the police won't work with ICE, because they won't work with immigration enforcement, They think you're obstructing the federal government, so now we're gonna occupy your state. Now we're gonna occupy your cities. The federal government is going to occupy its own citizens because you are not doing what we want you to do. And it's really funny because I think I was watching The Good Liars. They had an immigration video come out the other day, and they went up to people and they said, "What about states' rights?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah, no, I'm for states' rights." He's like, "Okay, so then what about what's happening, sending the National Guard to LA? Well, he just had to clean it up. He had to do. Okay, but what about states' rights?" And it's like they couldn't put the two together. That goes against everything you're saying you stand for. And yet you're excusing it. And you just can't see how contradictory that is.
Its effort to enforce immigration law.
ABC 7 chief legal analyst Gil Sofer telling the I-Team while an action like this can and likely would be challenged in court, the seldom used strategy of deploying National Guard troops is becoming more and more common.
Until
I just hate the way they're talking about this. And I've noticed this from watching a lot of different news stories recently. Everyone's just talking about this this is just normal, and there's no intensity, there's no nothing, and I think they play it down a lot of the time. I don't understand. I get it, these news companies are owned by, a lot of them are owned by Fox. They don't want to stir people up, but this is not normal, and they're downplaying it most of the time. It's a lack of urgency. It is a lack of urgency, and it's a lack of understanding the importance or the moment we're in. And I don't understand. I'm sure the people themselves want to want to act with a little bit of urgency, want to be a little scared, but I'm sure they're being told they have to, do straight news and they can't have an opinion or whatever. I don't know either. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to this. I just don't know. Because courts are helping in a sense, but they're not listening to the courts. So I don't know what to do because they're just not listening. And of course the Supreme Court isn't going to do shit. So where does that leave us,
a year ago, you could count on one hand the number of times that the National Guard has been activated, federalized. We've already now seen it happen in Los Angeles. There's a threat to make it happen in Chicago. It could happen beyond that.
What the president is claiming that he wants troops to do, they don't even have the authority to do it.
Right.
They have no arresting powers. They have no legal authority to be able to implement or to do any police work.
It comes amid a large-scale threat campaign from the Trump administration, lawsuits from the Justice
Right, because that's not what it's about. That's not what it's about. It's about, it is to be threatening. That's the whole point. That is the whole point. It is to be threatening. He wants people to be threatened because, again, these are blue cities and blue states. He wants people to feel threatened. That's what he wants. He wants people who didn't vote for him. He wants people who don't like him to feel unsafe. He wants them to cripple under the pressure. That's what he wants. There are people protesting now. I know there are people, I think there were veterans recently, I think just earlier today, that are protesting and doing a sit-in, and they said they're not going to leave until the National Guard leaves. And so there are people, which scares me now that I think about it, because they have weapons now, so that's a little scary. But there are people who are pushing back. I think there was a protest in Chicago over the weekend, and so people are pushing back. This is not people are not taking this lightly, and I think him doing this in blue cities in particular is because those tend to be the places where people do push back, where there are big protests, and so he doesn't like that. He doesn't want that, so he's trying to scare everyone into submission now. And I definitely think that's what this is. He's trying to scare people into submission, to not feel safe to fight back, not feel safe to protest, not feel safe to make your voice heard, so he can just do what he wants. I mean, sometimes it's hard for me to gauge, are people actually paying attention? Are they actually scared? Or is everyone still deluding themselves into thinking that we're just going to get through this in 4 years? I don't know. I don't know where people are at, but I feel like people are just deluding themselves into thinking we're just going to get through this in 4 years. And that's just, I don't even think, I think it's going to be hard to get through till the midterms at this point. This is not, This is not good. This is not good.
Department challenging sanctuary policies across the country, including in Illinois. A visit to the Chicago area from Homeland.
That's what a lot of this is too. Or these are sanctuary cities or sanctuary states. So he's mad and he doesn't want them to be sanctuary cities or sanctuary states anymore.
And Security Secretary Kristi Noem calling out local politicians.
They're being obstructionists when it comes to getting dangerous criminals off of their streets.
Again, what about states' rights? What about states' rights? What about that, huh? That just doesn't exist anymore? Doesn't exist anymore? Okay.
And now letters from Attorney General Pam Bondi to dozens of districts, including Illinois, calling on states to dismantle sanctuary policies or face federal funding cuts.
I'm not daring them to do anything. I'm just saying they don't have a right to federal law and state law, separate endeavors, and they don't have a right to do the things that they're threatening to do.
And as the I-Team reported last month, a landmark lawsuit from the Justice Department over sanctuary policies in Illinois, Chicago, and Cook County was dismissed by a federal judge. The Justice Department deadline to replead the case is today. And the I-Team confirmed with the Illinois National Guard they have received no orders from the president to mobilize in the city. As of this hour, the Justice Department has not amended or repleted its lawsuit against the state and Chicago over sanctuary policies. If they do not do so by midnight tonight, the judgment will be final, although they will have a chance to appeal to a higher court.
Oh.
Late this afternoon, Governor...
Oh, no. That's what they're doing then, isn't it? Oh, no. Oh, no. Then that's probably what they're doing. They're probably not going to respond, and they're just going to appeal it in a higher court. Because I think a lot of this court stuff is also dangerous because eventually it's going to have to go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is going to side with him. So I do think this is also dangerous. That's like the most messed up part about this all is that the courts are the only ones who are seemingly saving us right now from the worst of the worst. But the problem is I think they're going to keep appealing things until they get to the Supreme Court. And then, of course, the Supreme Court is going to side with them. That's a very frustrating part about all of this.
Pritzker said in part, quote, "Our state and local law enforcement partners know our neighborhoods and our streets because they live here too. They are not asking for this, and we will continue to listen and coordinate with them."
And that's what he keeps saying. He keeps saying, oh, well, people are asking me for this. Everyone in these cities are asking me for this. The other day, he was saying black women were asking him for this, which is psychotic. And he just keeps saying that. He keeps saying that everyone's asking for this. Everybody wants this. The other day, he said a story about how... He said a couple crazy stories. The other day, he said a story about how now his friends can go out to eat. They haven't gone out to eat in years because they were so scared because they kept getting mugged every time they went out to eat. But now they can go out to eat. So they've been out to eat like 3 times this week, even though bars and restaurants have reported that their traffic has gone down substantially since the National Guard has been there. So that's not true. That's also an insane story that's not true at all. Another story that he told, I think today, was that his friends, I forget what city it was it like Baltimore or LA or one of the states? He said that, city is one of the cities. He said that in this city that they leave their car doors open, they leave their trunk open, they leave everything open so that way people can come and get things and they don't have to deal with it. This man is like he's like, well, of course he's lying. He's of course lying. But I also think he's losing it. That's insane. That is not happening. Like, what are you saying? It's so stupid. He will lie. He will tell these outrageous stories, and then people just laugh. People just laugh. And like, this is not funny. This is not funny. This is not funny at all, actually. Like, this is actually really terrifying, and no one's pushing back. No one's correcting him when he lies.